In early February 2020, after my ex-wife and I completed our divorce, I decided to rent a 3-bedroom condo. This condo belonged to a good friend who owns 2 attached condos. He lived in the other one with his family. At the time, I was 38 years old, and I had 2 kids from my previous marriage, a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. Shortly after, I began dating a 32-year-old woman who didn't have any children of her own. We met at a point in her life where she had been searching for Mr. Right. Before meeting me, she had been in a relationship for 9 years, thinking that she would spend the rest of her life with that person. Unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse when he unexpectedly broke up with her. What made it even more challenging was that she was on the brink of starting a family with him before the breakup occurred. When I met her, she seemed eager to have a child, giving off a vibe of desperation. I informed her that I didn't initially plan to have more children, but I was willing to discuss it because I cared about her and wanted to make our relationship work. She often talked about her biological clock, freezing eggs and such. Being emotionally vulnerable at the time, I made up my mind that starting a family was a possibility. She was incredibly attractive, and I couldn't understand why her ex would let her go. I was so enamored that I was ready to say or do anything to keep her. However, I made a crucial mistake. I failed to disclose to her that I had a vasectomy 14 years earlier. It felt like a very private matter, and I believed it was something I could easily address by reversing the procedure at a doctor's office. Since we were still in the early stages of our relationship, I chose not to share that detail. During the pandemic, things moved quickly because schools were closed, and my 17-year-old son moved in to wait out the situation. Since my girlfriend and I had just started dating, she was at my house all the time. Traditional dates were not possible due to closures everywhere. Typically, our courtship might have taken months or weeks, but in just 1 week, we became physically intimate without using protection. My plan was that once quarantine restrictions were lifted, I would schedule surgery to reverse my vasectomy, so the situation didn't seem like a big deal. Both my girlfriend and I were working from home, and we spent most of our time with my 17-year-old son. Like my son, I enjoyed gaming, and we would play video games together when my girlfriend and I weren't occupied with our laptops working. She and my son got along really well, and it was a great time spending moments together. Sometimes my friend, who owned the building and was our next-door neighbor, would come over with his family. Most times he would come alone, and we'd head to the backyard to smoke cigarettes. My friend had a particular brand he liked that I didn't enjoy, and I was quite specific about replacing the ashtray, which becomes important later in the story. I'm one of those people who go to bed quite early. I noticed that my girlfriend, on the other hand, would stay up all night playing video games. At first I thought it was cool. I felt fortunate that my son and his future stepmom were getting along well. About 1 month into the lockdown, I started noticing some red flags. My girlfriend began dressing very provocatively around the house, even going as far as walking around in just bikinis, and we didn't even have a swimming pool. I felt concerned, especially since I had a 17-year-old son with raging hormones, and my friend would sometimes come over. I noticed him staring at her when she dressed like that. Feeling uncomfortable, I decided to talk to her about it. She claimed she was unaware and explained that she was used to wearing less clothing because she grew up near the beach. However, she did make an effort to cover up a bit more after our conversation. About 2 months into the lockdown, our relationship was going well, and we were having amazing intimacy. The lockdown felt like a break from reality, and despite her flirty and somewhat desperate behavior earlier, she seemed like a good girlfriend. All the initial red flags I noticed seemed to be in the past. Towards the end of August, as the lockdown lifted and we were preparing to go back to the office, my girlfriend shared some surprising news. She was pregnant. It's worth noting that I hadn't undergone the vasectomy reversal yet. When she told me about the pregnancy, I felt a mix of shock and confusion. She took offense, thinking I wasn't happy and suggesting I might not want to have babies with her, which triggered her self-esteem issues. In response, I reassured her, expressing my happiness and explaining that I was just initially shocked to realize I was going to be a dad. After I reassured her and she left feeling happy, I found myself alone with my thoughts, contemplating what had just happened. I knew the vasectomy had worked because my ex-wife and I never had another child. Even then, I couldn't be certain if the baby wasn't mine since we were intimate every night. The unsettling thought that I didn't want to entertain was the possibility that she might have been intimate with my son. The mere idea made me feel sick. To avoid dwelling on that distressing possibility, I scheduled an appointment with a doctor located far from my home. Unfortunately, all the doctors in my area who specialized in such matters were either fully booked or slowed down due to the ongoing pandemic. After visiting the doctor and undergoing tests, I didn't receive a definitive answer. The doctor mentioned that pregnancies after a vasectomy had been reported. Despite my skepticism, my relationship with my girlfriend at the time remained great. I found myself almost forcing myself to believe that I was the father, unwilling to entertain the suspicion that my girlfriend might be having an intimate relationship with my son. Over the following months, my mood changed around her and my son. Every innocent display of affection she showed my son before now seemed like a potential sign of betrayal to me. I love my son deeply, and if I raised the subject and turned out to be wrong, it could irreparably damage our relationship. It was a dilemma, and I struggled with accepting her pregnancy. As we moved into October, things began to return to normal. My son moved back to stay with his mom to finish high school, and my now 3 months pregnant girlfriend and I resumed our regular work routines. One day, I went for a smoke in my backyard earlier than usual and noticed that my ashtray had some cigarette butts from the brand my friend uses. Normally, I might have dismissed it as leftovers from our last smoking session together, but we hadn't smoked together in a while, and I had sat in the same spot the day before. It struck me that my friend must have come to my backyard to smoke, raising the question of why he chose my space over his. I speculated that perhaps he was hiding his smoking from his wife, who had been encouraging him to quit. This seemed like a plausible explanation, but a nagging thought persisted that there might be more to the story. To clear my doubts, I decided to install a hidden camera in my backyard. 2 days after I installed the camera, I was reviewing the footage when I stumbled upon something shocking. On that particular night, I went to bed early as usual, and my girlfriend and my friend were in the backyard chatting. She decided to go back inside the house, but before doing so, she engaged in a passionate moment with my friend, revealing an ongoing affair. I was deeply shocked by what I witnessed on my hidden camera. Confronting my girlfriend with the evidence, she confessed that the affair had started during the first month of the lockdown. It wasn't until I spoke to my son after ending the relationship that I learned she wasn't playing video games with him. Instead, when I went to bed, she would go to the backyard to spend time with the neighbor. After confronting my girlfriend and her admitting to kissing him, but claiming they never went further, I revealed the vasectomy secret, expressing doubt about being the father of her unborn child. This revelation hit her, and she started panicking, accusing me of lying, wasting her time, and using her. I told her that she was the one planning to use me to support a child that wasn't mine, and she should go to the actual father of the child. She got angry, saying I should consider myself lucky that she chose me. I reminded her that her previous relationship didn't end well, and I had taken pity on her, but she cheated on me. She responded by saying I didn't deserve her and left. Feeling furious and betrayed, I went to my friend's house next door. I knocked on the door and his wife answered. Seeing my anger, I told her that I suspected the baby my girlfriend had belonged to her husband. Just then, he came out of the house and his wife was shocked. I confronted him, labeling him a snake, and in front of his wife, I accused him of having an affair with my girlfriend. He looked stunned but couldn't deny it. I informed him that he had been exposed, and I had the videotape to prove it. His wife kept asking if it was true, and he admitted it was a mistake. Angered, I left his house and headed back to my apartment. The following day, my now ex-girlfriend returned to retrieve her things. I attempted to get her to provide more detail about the affair, but she was in a hurry to run away without providing any closure. After she left, I called my son and discussed the situation with him. It was then that he informed me they never spent much time playing together, as she would disappear, and he assumed she went to our room. He had no idea they were together in the backyard. I felt like I had dodged a bullet in that respect. I happened to be the guy there when she was desperate to have a baby, and she didn't care whose it was. She was very attractive, and my friend fell for it, leading to the destruction of his marriage. The following month, I broke my lease and moved out of his condo. His wife is divorcing him, and my ex-girlfriend wants nothing to do with him. I found a different apartment and moved on with my life, being more cautious with the women I dated. 6 months later, after my ex-girlfriend gave birth to a boy, I reached out to her. She agreed to a DNA test for closure and peace of mind. Lo and behold, I wasn't the father of the baby. I can only guess that the baby belongs to my ex-friend, who is now divorced.